Hello everybody, GamerZ here with some good news. Feminazi Frequency has come out with their last video. Also, I have come out with a way to enhance the quality of my microphone so that I sound more pleasing to listen to. Also, someone very generously made me this logo, Inquisitive YouTube, link in the description below, to make me more pleasing to look at. Now, since I have a lot of subs, and actually not quite that many people in the Discord, I just wanted to let you guys know, for those subscribers that watch my videos and haven't gotten to the end of many of my videos, I just want to remind you we have a Discord for the Z community, link also in the description below. But let's talk about the video that we're going to do today. Anita Sarkeesian made her last video for the Feminazi Frequency, and it regards, skip the drumroll, how women as sidekicks in video games propels a negative stereotype about women in today's society. She believes women who play supporting roles to the main character in video games should not be helpless or be provided something other than just being a supportive character, something meaningful, as she says. As always, I'm going to go through the video, rip it apart piece by piece, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay, it looks like I can open them from here, but I won't be able to come in with you. Here goes.
Just keep in mind, Anita Sarkeesian had 6,000 people or more back her up on Kickstarter to make these videos. 6,000 people.
In 2013, 2K Games released BioShock Infinite, the eagerly anticipated follow-up to the earlier, hugely successful BioShock games.
Tell me, Anita, were these games more popular because they didn't have a female sidekick?
Infinite's story centers on a man named Booker DeWitt, a private investigator with a bloody past who takes on a mysterious assignment. Bring us the girl and wipe away the dead.
Why do I feel like she's reading off of a game cover? That just feels weird to me, the way she's saying it.
What follows is Booker's adventure to the flying city of Columbia, where the girl, Elizabeth, has been imprisoned in a tower for her entire life. Busting her out of captivity while she busts out of her corset, Booker shoots his way across Columbia, getting caught up in all sorts of drama in the process.
Sure, that is basically the story. Sure.
As the game tells players a garbage story which suggests that oppressed people are just as bad as their oppressors and that the truth is always somewhere in the middle.
Oh, wow. Did you just really say that BioShock Infinite had a garbage story? All because you interpreted a rather strange theme from the story itself? Now, I will admit, I did this once with Horizon Zero Dawn, which I have now changed my mind about. I used to think that Horizon Zero Dawn had a very strong feminist theme to it, which, to an extent, may be true, but this is when you look really, really deep into video games, which nobody should be doing. Really, you should be just looking at the video game, seeing what the story's about, and just play the game for its story, for its gameplay, for its graphics, for whatever you want to play the game for. Not look deep into the storyline and see the potential motives of the game developers and such. Now, while I'm not saying you can't play games and maybe get a theme or moral out of the game, as you do with stories and poems and stuff of that nature, what I am saying is if you make askew interpretations like this, where personally you don't know what the designers of the game meant for the moral to be, and you just go in and say this is what the game was made for, and it was to be sexist, and it was to be racist, or it was to be misogynist, or against women, or whatever the hell you want to say there, just saying that to the public, to 6,000 people that paid you to make these videos, to the company, to any normal person, that could be slander. That's like me calling you a con artist for accepting money, large sums of money, from people to make 12 videos over a span of, what, 4 years? And say that all without any substantial proof. What if that's not really your intention? Well, I just defamed you because I thought that's what you were doing. That's exactly what you're doing to these companies, to these video game designers. and you don't know anything about what they made their game for. You're just making askew interpretations of it.
But that's much too big a can of worms for us to open in this video.
Oh, so BioShock Infinite has a garbage storyline that suggests that the oppressed are just as bad as their oppressors, but nah, we won't cover that in this video. That's just too big a can of worms, because you can't defend it, because it would be slander.
Let's just focus on Elizabeth.
I like to call this the hit and run strategy. Make your claim and then back the fuck off.
Elizabeth possesses an incredible ability to open portals to other timelines, an ability that plays a significant role in the plot as Booker and Elizabeth hop forward and backward and from side to side in time, leaping from one version of Columbia to another, and sometimes thrusting Booker into the past or the future. So as a plot device which drives elements of the game's narrative, she's very significant.
Perfect. With Elizabeth being able to travel through time and progress the plot as it does in the game, I would say she's pretty significant, and so did you. Let the credits roll and the curtains fall. We're done here. Oh, you're not.
In gameplay terms, however, Elizabeth serves a different kind of role, that of a glorified door opener.
Otherwise, progressing the plot, right?
Here we go. As with most shooters, BioShock Infinite often puts you into situations where you can't progress until you've cleared an area of enemies.
Which makes sense, otherwise you could totally speedrun it.
The way it frequently does this is by blocking doors to the next area that can't be opened by Booker.
And if you can't logically explain those locked doors, then people would probably get really mad. Or confused. But that's why Liz is there, to explain that plot hole.
Only Elizabeth can do this, which she does only when all the enemies have been killed.
Again, this is to explain that Booker can't open doors himself, thus he needs a sidekick, which makes her worth something.
For all of her tremendous powers, Elizabeth is reduced by the game's mechanics to doing the most basic and menial of tasks, and waiting around for her to open a door becomes a significant aspect of how players experience her.
Let me scout ahead, see if there's some way to move forward.
Okay, so Elizabeth has this incredible ability to open tears, as it's called in BioShock Infinite, in order to go through time and progress the plot. If that's all she did, I think you would be saying something else like, oh, she's portrayed as worthless and nothing more than just a door opener to the past or to the future. Figuratively speaking in that sense, but still opening portals, opening doors. Think of it this way. Without her, the plot wouldn't exist. The plot wouldn't be there. Symbolically, Elizabeth opens those doors to progress the plot and remind you, as a player, that she is still imperative to the plot. She is an important character that you need to be reminded that she's there, or you might forget about her, and you might not even realize that she's such a key character, because, you never see her. Would you rather she's shunned to the back of the room, never to be seen again, only to pop up when you need her? First of all, you might say that that's excluding women from being key roles in video games. But also, it makes zero plot sense as Booker DeWitt is always supposed to be by her side because it's an escort mission. She's supposed to be rescued from the island of captivity and escorted to the people that Booker is supposed to bring them to.
Of course, she performs other actions as well, sometimes tossing Booker ammo, first aid, or other useful items, or opening tears through which he can have her summon things like weapons or killer robots to help him in combat.
So basically what you're saying here is she's not just a useless door opener. She actually helps with gameplay. Wasn't it you that just said?
For all of her tremendous powers, Elizabeth is reduced by the game's mechanics to doing the most basic and menial of tasks.
While arguably throwing medkits and ammo to Booker is basic, they're definitely not menial. They help Booker. Also, in a gameplay sense, summoning weapons, and of course, throwing weapons to Booker, is absolutely astoundingly helpful. The only reason she's not given a gun is it's because it's not Left 4 Dead 2. This game is single player, not single player assisted by a bot.
Now, there's nothing inherently wrong with the idea of characters who play a supporting role in combat situations.
Which is exactly what she's doing.
But Elizabeth is an example of a female sidekick who is reduced to a tool.
Which is exactly what support characters in video games are. They're tools. If when I played BioShock Infinite, and believe me I have, if I played this game and Liz had a gun, and she was constantly killing people left and right, I would not feel alone in this experience. I would not feel like I'm the one doing everything that needs to be done in the game. I would feel like, oh my god, this fucking bot is taking over my life. How can I stop this? Oh, there's a gun to my head, pull the trigger. Single-player campaigns with supporting characters, either male or female, are just that, single-player games with only me enjoying them, and only me having the experience of getting through the levels and having my skill being tested, not the bots, but my skill being tested through this campaign in which a character is helping me out through the process, but not tremendously so. And this is coming from someone who plays video games on a regular basis. You as a non-gamer wouldn't know this kind of stuff. As a gamer, you don't want to be played with a bot. You want to be the one playing. Sure, you can have supportive characters in the game, but what's the point of playing the game if you have a bot that is basically playing the game for you?
There aren't gameplay mechanics that allow you to have meaningful interactions with her.
Besides opening doors and summoning weapons and throwing weapons and ammo and medkits to Booker, all of those aren't gameplay interactions of a sidekick trying to help the main character get through. Now, you might be talking about having a meaningful discussion about feelings and emotions and getting to know her as a character, but we're not playing Metal Gear, you know? We don't need all these cutscenes about emotions and drama and internal effects. We're there for the shooting. We're there for the story, the overall, how do I get this girl out? And how do I rescue this girl from captivity? That's basically what we're playing that game for. I don't want to play Bioshock if I have to sit through cutscenes listening to the fifis of my sidekick. That would not be very fun to me.
She just opens doors and dispenses useful things, and her tear-opening powers are not her own, but yours to call on and control with the press of a button.
Elizabeth, a little help?
Looks simple enough.
Again, why is calling upon her powers bad? If it wasn't you telling her what to do, it would be the game telling her what to do. At certain points, she would have to open those tears sometime, right? Otherwise, you would not progress throughout the game. So yeah, someone has to tell her what to do, and telling her to do those as Booker DeWitt increases that bond between them, which is what you said never happens throughout the story, even though it happens all the time.
At other times, she's less like a person and more like a sexualized slot machine tossing you the occasional coin.
Here you go.
Sexualized? Sexualized. Tell me, what about this is sexualized?
Here you go.
I didn't see it. Want to see it again?
Here you go.
Nope, still no boner. Like, she's even dressed head to toe. What's supposed to be all sexual about her? This is in the 1912s, by the way. 1912 is when Booker DeWitt heads to Columbia to rescue this girl. Remember back then when women weren't supposed to show any skin? That's exactly what's happening here. Where is any skin? What can I get off to in that?
Here you go.
Ooh, I jizzed it. I'm a lion. And that wasn't even her.
As a glorified gatekeeper, Elizabeth joins a long tradition of female sidekicks, including Alex from Half-Life 2.
You're bringing Alex into this too? She has a gun. She has one of those guns that can turn into a pistol, into a rifle, into a shotgun. You can't even find a gun in Half-Life 2 that does that. That would be so useful. And Alex isn't even over-sexualized either. She's clad head to toe. 'Cause, you know, it's Half-Life, and you don't want all that radiation shit on you.
And its follow-up episodes, and Yorda from the much-beloved Ico, whose magic is needed to activate doors, staircases, and other mechanisms that allow players to advance.
That sounds pretty useful to me.
Yorda also has a distinction of being the quintessential example of what I call the damsel escort mission.
To be honest, why are you not looking at Super Mario Brothers? Like, honestly.
You know, after making 3 whole videos about damsels, I'd kinda hope to never have to talk about them again.
But you kinda have to, even though it's still not a good point. I mean, seriously, look at all these clothes!
But gaming's love of using helpless women as both narrative and gameplay devices was too much for even those videos to contain.
Seriously, I thought it didn't matter what the gender of a support character or a protagonist was. But apparently support characters can't be female, and protagonists can't be male. Otherwise, it's sexist. And we don't want games to be sexist.
Damsel escort missions occur when a female character joins the male player character, but is largely helpless, and rather than being a clear benefit to the player, she feels more like a burden.
Like, oh my god, you even said it right here.
A female character joins the male player character, but is largely helpless.
What if a female character is joined by a male character who is largely helpless? Would it be sexist then? No, of course not. Of course not. It's only sexist when it's about women.
In Ico, players free Yorda from a cage early on. She then joins Ico on this journey, and much of the game consists of solving puzzles so that Yorda, who can't make leaps or climb walls on her own, can traverse the environment.
And if escort games like this are your favorite, then guess what? There are a lot of them. And it's not largely a female and male sort of thing. It's sometimes male and male. Have you played Splinter Cell? In Splinter Cell, Sam Fisher, a male, usually has to go on hostage extraction sort of missions. A lot of these hostages are males. They're largely helpless males that don't have guns to defend themselves, and the only purpose they serve is to either open a door or to get extracted. This happens a lot, actually, and you're not even focusing on those. And I know you'll get to why in a bit, but that's going to be later in the video. Gotta keep that as a surprise ending. And no, just so you know, it's something I disagree with, so it's not like some kick in the ass, haha, you got trolled. Just, yeah, whatever.
Meanwhile, players also need to protect her from the shadow monsters who sometimes try to whisk her away.
Well, what other challenges do you need to put into the game besides platforming and getting the damsel, as you say, back to where she needs to go?
Spoiler alert.
Just in case you for some reason want to play Ico from 2001, go ahead, and I'm skipping the spoiler. Without giving too much away, she says that a certain character that has previously shown her damselness in the game suddenly turns around for a plot twist at the end. In other words, she's a support character who, at the end, changes the plot in the plot's favor, gives a good ending to the story. In order to stop spoiler footage from showing, I will just directly quote Anita Sarkeesian. But what the narrative tells us or shows us in the end doesn't undo the impact of how we experience a character in the gameplay. So what she's saying here is just because the character is suddenly useful at the ending doesn't mean that she was useful to begin with. And that ending is just an easy cop-out answer as to the usefulness of that character, even though that character has literally been guiding you through the entire plot the entire time. How much more useful can you get?
Another classic damsel escort mission occurs in Resident Evil 4,
You're joking.
where Ashley Graham, the president's daughter, has caused players tremendous frustration over the years by burdening them with the need to protect and manage her.
That's an unsupported attribution. You said that many players are frustrated and burdened by the president's daughter in Resident Evil 4, when really that's not the point of her being there. While it could annoy some people, the reason why she's there is just to provide a challenge for the player to get through. Get this person from point A to point B, and have her overcome obstacles that you otherwise would not be able to overcome, and get the objective done and have the satisfaction of completing your objective successfully. Do all games need to be single player only, where they're not being supported by any character? Or does the supporting character need to be a female, or does the protagonist need to be a male? Why are you putting rules on gaming? Why are you putting rules on the creative design that the developers want to put down for themselves? A lot of these standards that you're setting down like this are limiting and restricting to the creative design of the video game developers. If you want to make a game, and you don't want it to be stereotypical and pushing a negative connotation towards women or whatever, then make it yourself and see how successful that game turns out to be. Even hire as many people as you need to in order to get that AAA quality game out and ready for the public to enjoy. Let's see how that turns out for ya.
Whether they're presented as capable or helpless, female companions often encounter situations in which they just can't proceed on their own.
This happens with male side characters too, you know. But you have to pick out the females because they need your support.
Ellie in The Last of Us, for instance, is hardly a Yorda-like damsel, but when she encounters a body of water, she may as well be, and Joel has to go out of his way to get her across.
You know, I wonder how fun the game would be if neither of the supporting characters would support themselves. Ellie gets into small spaces, and Joel gets Ellie across water. What's the point of having a side character if the main character isn't going to help that side character, or vice versa? The Last of Us does that really well, and to be honest, it's not sexist at all.
Now look, there's a lot to admire about The Last of Us, but
Except, obviously, the fact that Ellie is such a damsel she can't swim in water.
I guarantee you nobody's favorite part of that game was helping Ellie get across the water.
You might be right on that, but not for the reasons you'd expect. Why would the most favorite part of the game, in my experience, be helping Ellie across the water? Why would that be my favorite experience in that game? Fuck the bosses, fuck the sneaky parts, fuck the action-packed adventure parts. Nah, my favorite was helping Ellie across the water. 10 out of 10 would play again. IGN. Kylo Ren. Ghostbusters. No? Cringe? Okay.
A good rule of thumb is that if you spend any portion of a game carrying a female character around, it's a pretty safe bet that it at least has some elements of the damsel escort mission.
A safe bet to make, a good rule of thumb, is to assume that every single female character that needs help at any portion in the game is a damsel in distress. Mother of all holy stereotypes. Anita, if you want to stop getting the agenda pushed in society that women are nothing but objects and over-sexualized in video games, then how about you stop doing that? Because the only person doing that is you. The thing I'm going to remember from now is that, okay, Anita Sarkeesian told me that anytime a female needs help in a video game, they are a damsel in distress. Alright, let me bring that into real life. Okay, this woman needs help picking up her bag. Well, she's a damsel in distress, and because I'm a male, I don't want to be that guy that helps out a damsel in distress because my feelings, and oh my god, I'm sexist. See, with male-on-male supporting character protagonist sort of deal, you're okay with that. With female protagonist and male supporting character, you're okay with that. But anytime a male has to help a female, oh, that's suddenly sexist. Oh, it's suddenly oppressive. Even as little as opening a door, or carrying Ellie across water. Anytime a man helps a woman in a video game, she is the damsel. Is the irony hitting you yet, Anita?
No, you're heavier than you look.
To be clear, there's nothing whatsoever inherently wrong with depictions of people helping each other in times of difficulty.
Except when it's a male helping a female.
If anything, we could do with a lot more narratives that focus on companionship, cooperation, and support.
If you want to get those kinds of games out there, then get off your ass and do it.
But the models games give us rarely offer experiences in which this kind of support is truly mutual.
Instead of bitching about games, you should make them.
Instead, we see a pattern of men frequently caring and helping women in situations where they're otherwise helpless.
If you want to change that, make some games. Is that clear enough for you?
This pattern is rooted in sexist ideas about men as protectors and women as the ones who need this kind of protection.
The only thing sexist here, darling, is that you're saying it's not okay for men to help women because then they would be seen as helpless. In the same breath, you say that helping people is a good thing, except when males do it to women. Then it's not a good thing. I'm dying. These double standards are killing me here.
It's coded into the gameplay that men are the ones who kill and protect.
No, it just makes a good narrative. It doesn't matter who the gender of the protagonist or the supporting character is.
And that women are the ones who experience moments of helplessness and need to be carried.
Seriously, have you not played Splinter Cell? Have you not played any game that has males in it that are helpless? This isn't an exclusively female thing. This isn't a gendered issue. In fact, this shouldn't even be an issue at all. You're just overanalyzing video games because you were paid by 6,000 people to do that in the name of feminism. What kind of oppression are you countering? What kind of rights for females are you giving females by making these series of videos? See, all you're doing here is making females look oversensitive. You're making yourself look oversensitive. You and many people like you are probably the reason why many people think that women don't play video games. Because you obviously show no knowledge of any sort of video game, plus you are very selective in the video games you play. And the video games that you play, for example, in the clips that you've shown, for Metal Gear, for example, you show Quiet as naked instead of in her suit. In the Batman clips that you've shown in your previous videos, you've tried to actually see Batman's ass from the cape. You are literally overanalyzing games, and you're making yourself look super sensitive.
When these female characters are of aid to the player, it's often in rudimentary ways, as a glorified door opener, or even as a more basic tool.
As a supportive character of any gender should be. You shouldn't be playing with an assistive bot that helps you and guides you through every second of every step of the way in single-player campaigns.
In the Ocarina of Time dungeon, inside Jabu Jabu's belly, players must carry the snobby Princess Ruto around.
Oh, you just called her snobby. That's sexist.
At one point, even using her as a weight to press down a switch.
Puzzles, you gotta love them.
And in Metal Gear Solid 5, you've got 4 sidekick options to take with you on missions.
Oh, here it is. Naked Quiet. Get ready, get ready.
A dog, a horse, a robot, and a woman.
Did you just say a woman? That's no ordinary woman. That's a woman that can teleport on command to wherever she wants to, and she has laser-like aim that can help you out in critical moments in the game. She's not just any woman. She's a woman that can shoot a sniper rifle better than you can, and has probably seen some shit. You gonna call her a damsel? Oh no, you're just gonna end that just right there. Bam. That's all you have to say about that.
Finally, female companions often function as cheerleaders, doling out little ego boosts to players for gunning down bad guys or pulling off other feats.
Supportive characters supporting protagonists by cheering them on. Yeah.
I have to get you out of here. Now come with me.
Take me with you, Leon. Don't make me spend another second with this Sarkeesian. No, come back. Leon! Guess I'm gonna have to spend another 20 minutes with this oversensitive priss. See what I do for you people?
Along with the glorified door opening and the damsel-like aspects, female sidekicks are there to make players feel better about themselves.
Why make the player feel shitty when you can make him feel happy? Genius.
To make them feel important and skilled.
Nice! You did it! You did it! Wow! You're so cool! You're just trying to impress me.
Were you impressed? Got all those guys all by myself?
Wouldn't you love to hear all of these egging you on to just motivate you to play the game that you paid money for? I would. I personally would. Oh, also, just gonna regard that last one for a second here. Nathan Drake is a smartass. That was a smartass remark that he made to his female companion, and to his companions. I believe there were more than just one companion in that level. Anyway, he's a smartass. He's supposed to be like that. That just accentuates his personality. That line right there, yeah, that's him. That is Nathan Drake in a nutshell. Of course, you were blind and deaf until that point, and then you were like, sexist alert! It's so sexist. Oh my god. How dare you treat women like this? Oh, the agony. Oh, you guys are all misogynists. That's my Anita Sarkeesian impression. Did you guys like it? Was it on point? Was it on fleek? Was it lit? With 3 OK symbols and a B emoji?
But these interactions are rarely depicted as mutually supportive.
Egg me on. I want to be egged on. I don't want to egg on the supportive AI that's not there.
It's not nearly as common in these scenarios for the male player character to offer emotional support to their female sidekick.
Because Quiet's busy trying to aim. Don't interrupt her.
To tell her that she's doing a great job.
But the players are the ones that need the supporting because they're the ones playing the game. The sidekicks aren't, and therefore shouldn't be getting support. That is, unless it makes logical narrative sense.
These particular sidekicks aren't designed as characters that players can actively engage in developing a relationship with. Characters who are fully fleshed out people with their own goals and desires that sometimes require players to compromise their own wants or desires.
See, what you're doing here, Anita Sarkeesian, is you're turning video games into actual feminist issues. Why? Why are you doing this? Video games aren't pushing a anti-feminism agenda or an agenda that women are nothing but tools. That's what you interpret from those video games because you're an overly sensitive little priss. When it comes to making games, it's not about pleasing the women, it's not about pleasing society, it's about making the player enjoy an experience that they paid for. I don't want to be playing a game that is always politically correct. I'm playing a game because I'm having an experience that I can't have in society. There's no zombies in society, so The Last of Us is a great escape from that. I can't go out and stab anybody I want in the back of the head, but in Grand Theft Auto I can. So how about you leave video games alone, because they have nothing to do with any agenda society is pushing.
This pattern of female sidekicks who serve more as gameplay devices, door openers, and ego boosts than as people is a design approach rooted in the idea of games as power fantasy.
Of course, you're not going to say the same thing about male supports helping female characters, because then it's not sexist. It's only sexist when it happens to women. Which implies that only women can be sensitive to those things, which again is sexist. Your double standards trying to protect women while shaming men for the games that they create and the dreams that they have to come true in video games is sexist. Ultimately, all of your double standards are sexist to men. So Anita, you suggest all of these good things in video games that video games should have, so why don't you make your series of video games instead of using that money to spend on homemade videos on feminism? If you truly think, Anita, that video games need these kinds of narratives, that all of the narratives in video games today are power fantasies, then how about you make your own video games? Let's see how successful they are. See, there's a reason why video games are made the way they are, and that's so that they can be bought, alright? You don't want to be politically correct in video games because nobody's gonna buy them. The only thing they're gonna see in those video games is an obvious political agenda with an overly sensitive developer. But yeah, let's see how many people buy your games if that's truly what gamers need. Because, remember, games are an art form. The way they are made, to please the player like that, that's what makes games get bought.
Players get to feel powerful and important.
Which is what I want to feel when I'm playing video games.
Sometimes issuing orders that are obeyed without hesitation or doubt.
In a video game, if I tell a character to do something, and that character doesn't do it because, I'm a woman, she feels so powerful, then I'm just gonna get frustrated. Like, why the fuck would the developers make the game like that? Oh, to push a feminist agenda. There is no narrative sense. There is no logical sense. No gameplay mechanical sense to make a character that you are able to control in that game disobey you or hesitate. If I'm playing Arma and I'm telling my squad what to do and they suddenly get their feelings hurt because they're getting commanded by a man, and they suddenly get offended and disobey me, what fun is that? Where's the fun in that? Video games are meant to be fun and playable and not frustrating unless they're rage games. But other than that, narrative games, like, what if Ellie just suddenly got offended, like, oh my god, Joel's just moving me across the water like I'm some sort of tool, and then she just stops obeying Joel and just runs away. What's the fucking point of that? There's just no point.
Companion dynamics in games almost never model what equal footing, cooperation, and collaboration in a relationship might look like, but instead serve to make the player feel like the center of the world.
Why would I play a game if I'm feeling like the Omega Wolf? The reason I play a game is to feel in control of the environment, to move around and complete challenges and be satisfied with those challenges I complete. To be powerful, to be commanding, to have a fun, non-frustrating gaming experience that things just work. When I push a button and tell someone to do something, it should work.
The one in control, which is not at all a model for healthy relationships.
Okay, I see where you're coming from, but if you're thinking that video games are a teaching tool in any way, then stop thinking that. Get that thought out of your head. Video games are not there to teach you morals. Video games are not there to teach any sort of ethics or anything. Video games are there to have an experience that you wouldn't have otherwise. There's a line that you need to draw between reality and video games. If I wanted to learn some good life lessons, or I wanted to learn what the best thing to do when you're roaming the streets of Los Angeles, I wouldn't play GTA 5. If I wanted to learn how to settle disputes maturely, I wouldn't play Red Dead Redemption where I can just get up and draw a gun at somebody, competing in games of death. If I wanted to learn good relationship advice, I wouldn't play a dating simulator. Oh, burn. Ouch. Yeah, I just had to. Anyway, games are not teaching tools. They're not learning environments. If you want to learn something, go to school, read a book, read a poem, do something other than play a video game. Video games are meant for entertainment purposes only, just as gambling is meant for entertainment purposes only and not investment purposes. Because remember, the house always wins. You're not going to get a big return out of that.
Of course, a huge number of games focus on men fighting alongside other men, and in these games, the male companions often have some of the same characteristics we sometimes see in female companions.
And that's at least 10 more confirms, Hunter 2-1, good shooting.
It's very common for male characters to compliment the player on their good shooting, or to breach a door that the player character can't open himself. However, typically these characters are presented as equal participants in the conflict.
And what, hostages you need to save from a building aren't? Have you played Rainbow Six? A lot of those hostages are males. Would you just expect them to be equal participants in the conflict when you're escorting them out? Here, have my gun, hostage. No, I want to feel like the person saving them. I don't want the hostages to save themselves. If I can give them a gun and they can shoot their ways out, what's the point? Actually, Anita, here's some good advice. Don't make video games.
In shooters ranging from Call of Duty to Gears of War, the player's male companions are armed and active, and are portrayed as playing their part to fend off or eliminate the enemy threat.
Yeah, ignoring male victims you have to save in, Splinter Cell or Rainbow Six.
Occasionally in these games, male characters do have to protect other men, but unlike scenarios in which men protect women, these less common instances don't reinforce pre-existing cultural attitudes about men, women, and gender.
There we have it. As Sarkeesian said, it's okay for men to be helped by other men, and not women to be helped by men, because it doesn't reinforce a pre-existing stereotype. That's basically saying, well, it wasn't wrong in the first place, so men shouldn't be having a problem with it anyway because it was never wrong. Women have the same rights as men now. But when men try to say, oh, I've been raped, people laugh and say, oh, look, this man got raped, he's a pussy, or he must have liked it because he's a man. Is it not wrong to say those kinds of things? Is it not wrong to benefit the woman in alimony cases? Oh, let me bring up abortion for a second. If women don't want the baby, but men do, women are still allowed the right to abort the baby, even though the man still wants it. However, if the man doesn't want the baby, but the woman does, the woman is still allowed to go through labor and have the baby, and the man is still expected to pay for child support for that baby. Do you see these double standards? It's the women that get to control the world at this point, not the men. The men need to stop being so powerful. The men need to stop being so commanding, except when it's to each other. If they're commanding a woman, they must be a misogynist. Oh, by the way, guys, get ready for another crock of shit. This is another double standard she's gonna pull out of her ass.
Similarly, the occasional situation in which a female character protects a male one, which happens in the 2013 Tomb Raider reboot, among other games,
among lots of other games,
also isn't a problem, because it doesn't work to reinforce limiting, harmful ideas about women or men that already exist in our culture.
So let me get this straight. Men helping women, not okay. Women helping male protagonist, not okay. Female protagonist helping a male, that's totally fine. So what's this about feminism being about equal rights again? I'm not quite getting the memo.
In other words, we live in a culture that says, generally speaking, men should be the protectors and women should be the protected.
How about this? Not anymore. From here on out, men are going to be equal to women and women equal to men. Bam. Feminism over. But that means, in order for equal rights to happen, people need to help each other regardless of gender, correct? So by you limiting who can help who, you are limiting the basic nature of your cause. Also, you are basically telling men that they are not allowed to help women under any circumstance. So, okay, if a woman drops her bag, I'm walking past her, because she's not worth my time, and I was told that I can't help damsels in distress. I hope you get the irony here. You are reducing women who need help to damsels in distress.
When women function as competent companions whose skills are more or less equal to those of the player character, it can challenge these ideas.
But by doing that, it makes games less fun. Why do I want to be the secondary character? Why? If the objective is for me to help this person, then let me do that. Don't make the side character all-powerful, probably more powerful than I am, taking all my goals and objectives away from me. Because at that point, right after I find the person I'm looking for, the person can already shoot themselves out of trouble. What's the fun in that? What's the point?
The Last of Us goes against the grain by giving us the character of Tess, a somewhat rare and refreshing example of a woman who fights alongside the male protagonist. And the later Gears of War games do a decent job of including female squad members who are on equal footing with their male counterparts.
But if you've noticed, those women in those games have combat roles, not supportive roles. In The Last of Us, they have to fight to survive. In Gears of War 4, they have to fight to survive. But in Resident Evil 4? But in Rainbow Six Siege, to rescue a hostage who happens to be female, do you expect her to be kicking her high heels at the person and shooting all the bad people in the face? If she can do that, then she's better off in the Tomb Raider games.
And thankfully, we're seeing more games that complicate and subvert the old patterns, providing players with relationships with supporting characters who don't function as mere extensions of the player, but who feel like separate individual people.
Here's what you're not understanding. In narratives that require the relationship between a male character and a female character, or a male protagonist and a female side character, then it is necessary to develop that bond. But in a narrative that just requires the protagonist to save the side character, no bond is really needed. You don't have to be buddy-buddy with the person you're escorting just to complete an objective. Especially if the narrative doesn't focus on the relationship between those two.
The 2016 indie title One Night Stand throws players into a situation with a female character who clearly has her own feelings and her own desires, and communicating with her is a matter of trying to find some common ground for mutual understanding, not one in which the player is in total control of the situation.
But again, the narrative depends on that relationship between the protagonist and the side character.
In Left Behind, the wonderful add-on for The Last of Us, Ellie's companion Riley is not someone players can issue orders to or someone they have to protect. Riley is constantly active, often taking control of the situation.
So she has a leader personality. Great for feminist views, right? But here's the thing. You're not restricted from having characters that act like leaders in those games, okay? Feminism is not needed in video games because video games are not reality.
Sometimes competing and being playful with Ellie.
Again, that's her personality.
And as a result, she doesn't feel anything like the companion characters in most games, or even anything like Ellie herself felt in the original game. Instead, she feels much more like a real person accompanying Ellie on the journey.
But not every game needs that. Not every game needs a side character that potentially does more work than the main character. Because again, if the point of the game is for me to save this person, I want to feel the one doing all the saving. I don't want my goals and my satisfaction taken up by some AI bot that I have no control over.
And while Trico in 2016's The Last Guardian may not be a human character, he does possess some of the characteristics we'd like to see more of in human companions in games.
Unsupported attribution, again, who's we? Because I know for a fact I don't want to see more of these in video games. It's not like that's my primary goal. Sure, it's a great game mechanic if that's what people are into, but I'm not into that, and I don't want to play games that I'm not in control of. That game seems more like an artistic adventure game. Look at what we can do with this giant bot. But not everyone wants to see that in video games. That's just an artistic development style and a plot style. It's a great gameplay mechanic, sure, but I don't want to play those kinds of games, you know?
Asking Trico to do things isn't a simple matter of pushing a button and watching him immediately obey. He's not a simple tool, not just an extension of the player. Sometimes he's hesitant, reluctant, even frustrating, but this makes it feel more like he's a living, breathing creature with thoughts and feelings of his own.
Seriously, your political correctness in video games is killing me.
And by taking time to pet him, you can sometimes express your connection to him in ways that fall outside of the requirements of the gameplay and the story.
See, it really looks like an artistic style gameplay. I mean, it really does.
And crucially, Trico is often the one protecting the player, rather than the other way around.
But why do I want to play as the guy at the bottom of the food chain? I would much rather play as that dog.
He does not exist to fuel a power fantasy, but
Seriously though, no games do.
to allow for gameplay mechanics that focus on cooperation, care, and helping each other.
The point of a game is not to teach people things. The point of games is to play them for entertainment. The fact that you're turning these into teaching tools for the society's young'uns is not good. Alright, stop it. What you're doing here is limiting the creative design of the video game developers that are actually making games. If you want to get up and make games like this, then you do it. Don't tell others what to do. They're not your games.
When supporting female characters in games don't have this kind of depth, when they exist primarily to be protected or to be ordered around, they not only reinforce harmful ideas about gender,
Which should be eradicated by now, but look who's bringing them back.
they also fail as characters.
No they don't, what?
Regardless of their gender, race, class, or sexuality, a person is more than a tool, and more than a burden, and games can and should give us mechanics and stories that reflect that.
There you go again with your political correctness teaching mechanics for video games. Video games are meant for entertainment, not for teaching, okay? And the second that you draw the line between reality and video games is the happier you'll be. You won't be so sensitive if you just realize that video games are not appealing to be real life, okay? If you want to learn something, read a book. Video games are not like books, okay? Video games are made solely to portray an imagination held by the creative director of a video game. Let me bring this up too. You see this kind of stuff in movies all the time, but why aren't you focusing on movies? Why are you trying to ruin the video game industry? Video games are not for kids. They're not for kids to learn off of, just as violent movies are not for kids to learn off of. They're for people to experience, for people to play with others with multiplayer games, or just to experience a narrative. They're not for you or for anybody else to shove political opinions down people's throats or try to change society in any way. They're specifically for playing, for entertainment. That is it. That is all you need for video games. Did you see all those names? Many of them were just people who donated or just supported other than working on the project itself. Not a lot of effort went into making this video, I can tell. But this Sarkeesian made a bunch of bank anyway. I'm glad that this Trope vs. Women series is over. It was cancer from the start. Who wants to have games ruined by some overly sensitive little priss who doesn't even make video games for a living? She doesn't understand the art of video games. She doesn't understand what goes into making video games and what goes into marketing the video games. She's trying to change an industry that she knows nothing about, which is kind of stupid. Learn the art, learn the technique of video games and what makes people buy them. Narrative and experience go hand in hand when it comes to making video games, alright? A good experience and a good narrative makes a fantastic game. But as the narrative goes down, then so does the experience. It doesn't matter how the graphics are or the gameplay mechanics. If the narrative is shit, then so is your game. Why don't you learn a bit of style first before criticizing video games? Learn what goes into making video games. Learn the creative design of video games before you start talking shit about them. And the number one thing I want people to take away from this video is that video games are only for entertainment. They're not for learning. They're not for anything else but entertainment. Okay, you play a video game because you want to simulate yourself in an environment which you cannot otherwise get into without the video game. Video games are simulations of real life. They are not real life, period. The sooner people realize this, the sooner people understand this, they're going to be less overly sensitive about video games. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.